In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian's Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is your host, Drew Hill, joined as always by columnist Chris Harrington. We've got a pair of Grizzlies victories to talk about, Chris. But let's start with there's more to life than basketball. My voice is hanging on for dear life right now. I don't know if that's coming across. I have a ginger honey tea in front of me and a lemon honey Hall's cough drop, and I'm just trying to survive at the moment. The talking may be a little bit more difficult than usual. Is it noticeable, or is my remedy working?
I think the dulcet tones are coming through. I think I'm okay vocally. The rest of me is a little shot. I was up late, obviously, for the game last night against the Grizzlies Wolves, and then I was up early this morning finishing up a long story. And I'm really ready to hit a holiday and just shut down. But I still got a couple more things on the agenda before I can get to that point. I'm trying to push my way through to clear my plate.
At some point, our podcast will go to video, but I'm not sure I've ever seen you wear a T-shirt before, and you're just rocking the T-shirt today. So,
I wear a T-shirt every day, but I usually have something on top of the T-shirt, right?
Yeah.
And so.
This is the celebratory, casual, relaxed Chris Harrington after he's been reassured by the last. We came on here last week. You can't win them all, by the way. We came on here last week.
Yeah.
We talked all about S8E18. We told the producer of the show, Natalie, there's not a game till Friday. You can take your time in putting it up. Don't worry about it. And then by the time the show went up, S8E18 had exited the lineup again. So that was not ideal. So our apologies on that. Obviously, that one came by a little bit of a surprise. Maybe it shouldn't have been as surprising as it was for us, but was a little bit of a surprise. And now, and then we were also talking about Jaren's poor performance. And then we come back next week and everything has changed. Everything is flipped around in the front court. You got Brandon Clark on the basketball court. You got S8E18 off the court, and you got Jaren Jackson essentially announcing to the basketball world, do you like apples? Do you like – because how do you like them apples the way he's played these last two games? And he's been incredible. So, wow, things are a lot different a week from last week. Or a week from now. Like I said, my brain is in 1,000 pieces. But yeah, it's a lot different now, Chris, than what we were talking about last week.
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's start with Jaren a little bit. There had been some consternation about him. He had not, on the whole, he was not having as good of a season as he's had the last couple at least. And then he had hit a particularly rough patch. 5 games in a row of scoring under 15 points. First time he'd had a streak that long since his rookie season. And I think a lot of people thought, and Thomas Islo basically expressed this after the game last night as we speak, that Jaren was sort of in his head a little bit. And for whatever has happened, he's really broken out of it. I think offensively he's broken out of it the last 2 games. Defensively, I'd push back a little bit further. That home game against Portland where the Grizzlies won in a blowout, he had 3 steals and I think 1 or 2 blocks in that game. And was really good defensively. He didn't scored 6 points in that game, but he was great defensively, made big defensive plays. And then the last 2 games in particular, the Clippers win and then the Wolves win, he's just been great all across the board. Season high 31 against the Clippers. I think it was 28 and 12 rebounds against the Wolves. And then he put up big stock totals, steals plus blocks totals in both of those games. And I thought against Minnesota, that was about as good as I've seen him in terms of a total game. The scoring, the defense, a little passing in there, and really the physicality. That was a tough game. That was not a game where like the Clippers, so you look up and sometimes they put James Harden on you or whatever. He was physically battling with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert basically every second he was on the floor, and those were 28 hard points that he got in that game. And I think Jaren has just been fantastic the last two games.
Yeah, Jaren. Yes, I agree. Um, he's also he was before these last two performances. I just saw a guy that was in his head, right? Like
Yeah,
that to some degree
100%.
was just in his head, and I that was also sort of the sentiment I was getting as I was asked about the situation too. Was that he just was in his head, and I think there was something about the way that that Clippers game started before we get to Minnesota, like the way that that Clippers game started. Not
They
only
made a
did
point,
they made a
yeah, getting
point to
him
get him
going.
the ball, and that was to the credit of the Grizzlies coaching staff. But also for those shots to go in, I think that really made a huge difference, right? Because you'd been waiting for that and waiting for that. And Jaron had talked about it too himself and said, like, I don't feel like I'm taking shots that I wouldn't have taken the last 2 years. Like I don't feel like anything's out of the ordinary. Maybe the situations in which I'm getting the shots is different, but the locations on the floor and all that, that's very similar to what I've taken in the past. So I think for those shots to go in early against Los Angeles helped him sort of get out of that funk or whatever, that slump, mental block, whatever you want to call it, and led to that performance. And then you saw it sort of carry over into the game against Minnesota. And look, no Anthony Edwards on the court because I think part of this, like in his own head stuff, is also the fouling, like the way that the fouling had sort of crept back up.
Right.
And I don't know, without Anthony Edwards downhill attacking the basket, I think it allows him to play defense a little bit differently in that Minnesota game versus if Edwards was available, maybe it would have looked a little different.
Well,
But
I would say the Jaren foul problem when it pops up is not a getting fouls defending problem. He gets fouls defending, but
he
everyone gets
does.
fouls defending. It's the when he gets the other kinds of fouls, the off the away from the ball, handsy fouls and the offensive fouls. It's the stuff like that makes it a problem. To me, I'm never concerned about Jared getting a foul, but defending a shot. But when you get like three of those other kind of fouls, and now the foul you get defending gives you your fourth, your fifth, or whatever, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right. So, um, I thought that was probably the most notable of all of the stuff that came out of the last two games was Jaren and just the way that he played. Cam Spencer against the Clippers was also phenomenal. Made what 7 to 10 shots from deep. Has just been really, really good when available. I think that put him at what 10 straight games with double digits off the bench, which
So
was the most in the league at the time.
the last 10 games he's played, we're setting aside the Minnesota game, where he was obviously out for personal reasons. It, the last 10 games he's played, all off the bench. Every game he's played but one this season has come off the bench. But the last 10 games, all off the bench. I'm doing this from memory, but I put it out on social media. I think he's averaged 17 points and 5 or 6 assists, shooting north of 60% from the floor, north of 60% from the 3 point line. It's not just because all of his shots are threes either, and 100% from the free throw line. So that's a 60-60-100 shooting split sound. I mean,
Pretty unbelievable.
he's just been fantastic. There are games here and there where the defense becomes a problem, but offensively, he's just been fantastic game after game after game.
So I before that game against the Jazz on Friday, the jaw return game, I should say. I ran into Cam Spencer walking in the halls of the arena, and he was just in a spot where usually players aren't. And I just said hello and asked him what was going on, and he was saying he needed to make a phone call. And then after that, I watched him, play in that game against the Jazz, in which he went 6 for 6 from three and pointed up to the sky. And I knew in that moment and didn't really want to ask that there was something had happened. And I don't think anybody minds, but he had a death in the family, so he missed the game for personal reasons. As is his brother is missing a game for Golden State. So thoughts to the Spencer family. But yeah, he has just been unbelievable. And I think, you know, we got that answer to the question you were asking last week, Chris, was how do you use Cam Spencer and who do you use as the backup point guard as Ja Morant comes back? And the answer is you leave Cam Spencer right where he is and you make Vince
Yeah.
Williams find a way to fit in. So,
Yep.
and that was the correct decision. In fact, I think there was moments late in that game against Utah where Cam was just playing better than Ja was. Like, so you almost just felt like you had to leave Cam out there.
Right.
Versus the opposite of what everybody talked about the beginning of the season, which is why isn't Ja playing more minutes? Why isn't Ja playing more minutes? Well, now it's the inverse. I had people in my mentions saying, "Well, why didn't Cam play more minutes at the end of that game?" So it just speaks to how good he's been, over this stretch. And I think he adds, a shooting element that the team really needs. And but nobody expected all this other stuff would come with it. That he'd be so good at moving the ball, and he gets into some passing lanes sometimes. I've noticed that he just scraps, and I think there's a lot to his game that is very real and more real than any of us
Yeah.
really thought coming into the season.
No, no, I agree. But with that Utah game though, in specifically, because I got asked this on the radio. What about not because took that three and missed it? What about Cam not being in the game? That's the reason they lost the lead in the third quarter. Is because Utah Isaiah Collier was attacking Cam Spencer every single time down the floor, and the Jazz scored 22 points in 5 minutes with against the Cam Spencer KCP backcourt. I mean, that's sort of why they lost the lead. Spencer's been great, but there is still a situational quality to him to a degree because you have to, and that's one of the reasons he's so good off the bench in part because a lot of the times he'll get on the floor and gets lineups that can't really exploit him. That was the case with the Clippers game. He was equally great offensively against the Jazz and against the Clippers, but the Jazz had lineups on the floor that could go at him. Against the Clippers, they're bringing nothing off the bench. They don't have any on-ball players except for like Harden and Kawhi, and so they could not exploit him defensively. So I think as good as he's been, there is still a situational quality to him, a matchup-oriented quality.
What did you make of the jaw return?
Um,
Return
I
and then
thought,
exit. Uh,
yeah, the Utah game was interesting because I think there was a really good. He had a great stretch in that game. I think it was in the third quarter where they built a lead, where he was just sort of controlling the game, and getting assists, getting points, drawing fouls, and just sort of had control of the game in that sort of dual scorer playmaker way that you want. And then it was interesting the end of that game because they had lost their lead and they were down. I'm doing this from memory. I think they were down 7 with about 4 minutes to go. They bring Jaren and Santi back in. I think they brought Jaren and Santi back in too late, but they bring Jaren and Santi back in, and they go on a 9-2 run to tie the game, 126-126. And in that 9-2 run, all 5 Grizzlies players registered either points, assists, or both. In John's case, both. He had a bucket and he had an assist. But all 5 players contributed to that 9-2 run. Now it's tied 126-126. There's like a minute or so to go. The next 3 possessions, which are the last 3 possessions that mattered for the Grizzlies, Ja Morant was literally the only player to even touch the ball, and they came up empty on all 3 possessions. And obviously, Ja has been a great closer at time, and call 12 is a thing. It's the reason why it's in the glossary. But that was a situation where they were playing good team basketball, and then when it got tight at the end, he decided, I'm just taking this for myself. 3 straight possessions and came up empty. And there's a real interesting thing happening with the way they've been playing well collectively on defense and with share the ball offense. And you look at that game against Minnesota, and yeah, Jaren had a big stat line, but it felt like he was just in the flow of the game with everybody else. And Ja is someone who's sort of singular. So in good ways and bad ways. Like something when he's playing well, he's sort of singular. When he's playing poorly, he's sort of singular. He's not a guy who just fits in, right? He's the guy who like things revolve around. And if he's going to be great, that can work. If he's not, it's sort of at odds with what the team is having success with now.
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to just repeat some of the points you made, but doesn't that feel like it's, especially with him, a little bit of a tricky thing to figure out because you have to balance this idea of, well, the team plays better this way And you think that. You think, well, the team has played better this way. But that also was because they got Zach Edey back, right?
Yep.
That was also part of it too.
Yep.
And then you can say, so it's not necessarily the system, although you can't say that for certain. And then you're also weighing what Ja does, which is be this player that is so unique that I think, like, when you ask why Ja has shoe deals and stuff, it's because he does stuff on a court that other players don't do, and that's what has made him so popular. And so you don't ask a player that's so uniquely gifted in certain areas to not be uniquely gifted in those areas and to fit within a scheme. So it does make it very complex as you try to put all these pieces together.
Yeah, no, I think what's tricky is yes, they've played much better. They started out the season 4-11, and they've gone, was it like 9-3 since then? And a lot of that's Zach Edey, but not the last two games was it Zach Edey.
Yep.
But the reason they've been better is primarily defense and rebounding and getting just enough offense, right? Getting enough, just enough from Jaren, just enough from guys to get over the top. They're 25th in the NBA on offense on the season as a whole. The offense has not been climbing the charts in this winning streak. The defense has. The defense is creeping into the top 10. And so they're winning with defense and rebounding. So the idea, I think, would be, get this dynamic creator back. You hope he doesn't just detract. You hope he adds more to your offense than he detracts from your defense and rebounding. And then it works out as a positive overall. I think that's the idea, and that's what's there to pursue. And especially if he can ever play with Zach Edey, which it hasn't happened. And so they still need. They've been playing much better basketball, but to be what they want to be, they have to be way better offensively. And Ja's the one who, in theory, gets you there. But like that's theoretical. We keep
No, it
waiting
is.
for some proof of concept, and it's not coming.
And what was interesting is like the idea that we were talking about earlier this season with all the injuries. Well, the Grizzlies may never get to see it. The Grizzlies may never get to see, Ja and Edey. And there's no rush on any of this because you look at the standings and it's like the Grizzlies are exactly where they're going to be. It just feels like there's so much slop behind them that, like, just get these guys healthy and see what they look like. I don't know. To me, there's less pressure now than there was before the season to, like, get it figured out.
I would say there's two finish lines, right? There's the end of the regular season finish line, and there's the trade deadline finish line. And there's a long season ahead, and you're right in the you're tied with Golden State for 8, and you're right. I mean, they probably maybe even should be 7 if they can get healthy. We'll see. And 4 games outside of Minnesota at 6, the long season. You can think about that. So they got plenty of time to be in this playoff race and be in a good spot in it. If they want to make decisions, bigger picture decisions about their team before the trade deadline,
they need Ja to play.
Yeah, and I don't know if they do. It would be very reasonable to say, you know what, let's play out this season and make decisions in the summer. It's very reasonable to do that. But if they wanted to make some big picture decisions by the trade deadline, they are running out of time to get good information on that.
That is true. Yeah, and that's not it's obviously not a good thing. Like I know nobody enjoys the Ja trade conversations, and I think everybody was a little quick to them at the start of this season, not saying that it wouldn't happen, but they were just quick to them because obviously it wasn't going to happen in like October. But I mean, Ja, if we are going to go that far down the road, if we're going to go further into the future here and we're going to talk trade deadline, whatever, first finish line, it's not a good thing if Ja's not on the court playing games for the Grizzlies. That's not a good thing for his trade value, for sure, for Memphis, no?
Oh, no, it's bad for trade value, if that matters. It doesn't matter if you're not interested in trading him, right? It's good. It's bad for that. It's also bad for the information gathering to make your decision.
Yeah.
And so
it's a lose for everybody. It's a lose-lose situation for all involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go onward to big picture Grizzlies and the rest of the NBA, but first let's take a break for a message from our sponsor.
Want to make a big impact without getting lost in a big system? Join youth villages to be a force for families while becoming part of one. Help make positive changes on a national scale, one community at a time. It takes a family to transform lives. Start with yours. Apply now at youthvillages.org/careers.
So the Grizzlies are now a game back of 500. If I were to tell
Oh,
you,
wait a minute. One other smaller thing we should do before we get
okay,
the big picture. Let's welcome back Brandon Clark.
yeah, welcome. Oh yeah, welcome back to Brandon Clark, who played in the game last night against Minnesota. Minnesota, probably the team that would least prefer to see Brandon Clark of all the teams in the NBA. Guy has been a Timberwolves killer over history for sure.
I joked earlier in the week that like other than like his own family, the person in the world who probably has the highest opinion of Brandon Clark as a basketball player is Minnesota Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch. I can think of press conferences in the past, like since that playoff series, where he's gone out of his way to be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that guy killed us." I
I
mean,
was.
our
Yeah,
friend John Krasinski, when it was announced that Brandon Clark was going to play, like 45 minutes before the game, John Krasinski tweeted out, and he already has 4 offensive rebounds. You know, I mean, they live in fear of Brandon Clark in Minnesota.
I know that's funny. One. Uh, Two, I was thinking about this last night. I missed like the first few minutes, but I was listening to Eric Hasseltine on the radio broadcast, and he sort of was talking about Brandon Clark missing his first shot. He shot the floater
Yeah,
over the rim, and I was thinking in my head when he said it out loud, like I don't know if I've ever seen Brandon Clark miss that shot against Minnesota. It feels like anytime he
right.
gets that floater, that ball goes in. But then, as the game played out, I was thinking, well, maybe this is just a backup center thing. Maybe the Grizzlies just have a backup center thing against Minnesota because they moved Jock
Yeah,
Landale to the bench, and then all of a sudden, Jock Landale, young Jock, goes off last night. So, I mean, that was fun to see. Fun to see Brandon Clark back. I mean. He this is a guy that I remember talking to over the summer who was so excited to get back out on the basketball court because it had just felt like he had never actually found a flow or gotten healthy. This was a conversation that he and I had at one of his charity events, and he had mentioned like, he had the Achilles, then he finally makes the comeback. He comes back from that, but he never feels healthy, and the Achilles had really led to other problems, whether it be ankle or knee in the same leg, and so he never felt like he got to a point where he was physically ready and prepared to be on the court. And then he gets, the lead up to this season, and he's telling me, I'm finally ready. I'm finally ready. Like I'm feeling so good, and then all of a sudden he's out again to start the regular season. So I'm sure it was very exciting for him to get back on the floor and play. Did you get the chance to talk to him after the game?
yeah. After the game, Isolo said something interesting about Clark before the game, where he said watching Clark, in some of the practice sessions and some of the behind the scenes stuff leading up to his resumption of play, he said that Clark looked more athletic than he did at any point last season, which does sort of make some sense because he's had this knee injury on top of the Achilles. But typically, with Achilles injuries, it takes sort of 2 years to get all the way back to what you were before if you're going to get there. And this would have been the second year of that. But he still said he's actually more athletic than he was at any point last season. And then then when the game happens, like if you look at the box score line, it's not good, right? His personal line's not good. The plus minus is not good. But when you watched him out there, you could see the bounce. He was getting elevation on the floater. There was a play in the fourth quarter where he went up above the rim to block Dante DiVincenzo. It was called a foul. Brandon Clark does not think it was a foul. The Grizzlies were out of challenges. But the fact that he got not to the rim, but above the rim to contest that shot sort of showed that bounce. And when I asked him about that, he said, yeah, the trainers are telling me I'm actually jumping higher than I did last year, which is sort of what Isolo had said. And I think, A, it's your first game back, so even if you have your bounce, you probably don't have your rhythm and your wind. But I also think, as much as Brandon Clark has terrorized Minnesota in the past, I think that was a rough game for him to come back to because he likes to do stuff in the paint, and they had Rudy Gobert out there
Yeah.
who's having a good season, and that was a lot to contend with. I think some of that in the lane stuff would have looked better against 27 other NBA teams.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I said earlier when I was asked about Brandon Clark on the radio was like, it wasn't like a performance that stood out that made you feel great about his return, but I did think it had enough if you try to put the pieces together
Yeah.
to make you feel good about Brandon Clark going forward just by watching the athleticism, right? And so, if you want to nitpick, you can find positives versus the other way around. So I thought it was overall a good start for Brandon Clark, even if it didn't show up in the box score. Um, okay, big picture NBA. Grizzlies are one game behind 500 now. If the Grizzlies were to finish the season below 500, would it be a disappointment? This
Yes.
is this the range where you think they're gonna be when the season it finishes up? Is right around 500, right at 41, 40 wins? Is that where you're thinking?
I'm no, I'm thinking above that winning percentage wise. Now, range of finish within the conference, I do think they are now in the range they're likely to finish in, which I think is that um 7 through 9 range. They're tied with Minnesota and I mean not Minnesota, Golden State in that 8-9 right now. Golden State would have the tiebreaker if the season ended today. So I think that 7 through 9 range seems like the place they are most likely to end up. But I think I like them to end up there with a winning record. I just
Yeah. Well,
I just think
I was gonna get to this. I was gonna get to what's more real. The way they started the season, oh, they were missing a lot of players. They're still missing players now, or
yeah.
the stretch of this 8-5 stretch.
Oh, I think this stretch is. I think I have seen enough. To me, the jaw thing is the great mystery. Well, there's two. There's the ED health thing is a big mystery, right? And then everything about jaw health and performance is a mystery, right?
And where he'll be.
Yeah. And so, but like the rest of the team, on the whole, I feel better than I did at the beginning of the season about the team. On the whole, I mean, Cam Spencer, I feel way better about. Cedric Coward, I feel way better about. Jalen Wells has taken that step forward in year two that you weren't sure if it was going to happen or not. Jock Landale, I think there's been bad stretches, but there's been really good stretches too, like last night. For a guy on a minimum contract, I mean that's a real player. And now Jaren's starting to come around. Edie has been way better. I mean, massive step forward when he played. And you still haven't even had Ty Jerome or Scottie Pippen, who I'm really high on both of those guys. With Pippen, it's going to be so late in the season. I don't know if you can count on much of anything from him, but like Jerome's going to be back, sometime in the next month or so, probably. And so I think this team has the talent to be an above 500 team in the West, and now they're only one game back of that now with 60 games to go or however many 50 something games to go. So I think they should be better going forward than they've been looking backward. But the Morant thing is just a huge question in all of that.
Okay, let me ask you this question this way. Is Memphis closer to Minnesota or to Portland?
I think they're closer to Minnesota. I really
I
do.
think that's when I phrase it that way, it becomes more tricky for me. Although I generally agree with you. I think this recent stretch of ball that they've played is more like what it's going to look the rest of the season.
I don't
But
think there are any teams below them in the West unless things just go really awry, which they could. Like, John Morant and Zach Giddey have played 4 minutes together this season, right? But I don't think any of the teams below Memphis in the West should. I think they should leave all those teams in the rear view. And I think going forward, I think they should be better than Phoenix. I think they should finish ahead of Phoenix. And then the questions to me are Golden State, which is really good when Steph Curry plays with their guys, but when without that, they get bad in a hurry. And then Minnesota's interesting because they have 6 really good players, and the rest of that roster is not very good. But those 6 guys are good, and if those 6 guys are healthy, like they're better probably. But the rest of that roster is not good. I mean, you watched it last night, and like what they're coming off the bench with, other than Naz Reid. I mean, it was rough
boy,
for
that
them.
Rob Dillingham pick, that
Woo.
was something.
I mean, they could have had Cam Spencer there at number 8, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the Grizzlies got
seriously.
a much better on ball small guard at 53 than Minnesota did at 8.
It's always risky drafting a player where you know that the defensive upside is that low.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I didn't like. I mean, we both did a lot of stuff on that draft, and we didn't. Neither of us talked about Dillingham. We talked about all kinds of players, and we agreed on a lot, and some we disagreed on. But Dillingham wasn't even on our boards for either of us. I didn't. I looked at him. I didn't like him.
if you're going to go based on standings, technically, the Grizzlies are 4 games back of Minnesota and only 3.5 games ahead of Portland, just based on standings. But I mean, you go off point differential, the Grizzlies are a lot closer to a team like Minnesota than to some of the other in the group behind them. I still think it's a worthy goal to try to get into that top six overall on the season. If I
Yeah,
were
I
to
agree.
force, I'm also keeping an eye on Phoenix, who's, by the way, starting to come back down to earth a little bit. Um, they are 4-6 in their last 10. Grizzlies are 7-3 in their last 10. Um, who of the teams behind Memphis do you think is the most legitimate? You've got Utah, Portland, Dallas, Sacramento, the Clippers, and New Orleans.
So it's not New Orleans, it's not Sacramento. Um, it's the Clippers. The Clippers just seem baked at this point. I know the talent is there, but it's just hard to imagine that. So to
It's just
wipe those,
crazy that the Clippers and the Pelicans still have nothing to play for. Like they're not going to tank because they don't
right,
have first round
right.
draft picks.
I think if Dallas decided to keep Anthony Davis, and if Kyrie Irving actually came back, like it could be Dallas, but I think they're going to go the other way with it. I think they're going to trade Anthony Davis, and I think they're going to look to pivot. So to me, honestly, it's probably Utah. I don't Portland.
That's where I got to too, and it just seems weird to talk about. But yeah,
Portland doesn't have this. Speaking about draft picks not working out, like Scoot Henderson, a major one. Um, Portland doesn't have the on-ball talent. And I don't know what Utah's going to want to do because Utah sort of wanted to be bad, and like they're just not really that bad. And, Keontae George is taking a step forward. They have Laurie Markkinen. And so, but you're sort of fishing around for a team, and that's sort of my point. I think there's a gap. I think there's a gap between the Grizzlies and the rest of the West. And so to me, it's can you climb up from 9? Not are you going to fall below 9?
Michael Scotto, national reporter, was talking on Yes Network the other night, talking about Utah and Laurie Markkinen specifically. And one of the things he had mentioned was that Memphis was one of the teams that had kicked the tires on Laurie Markkinen in the past, and also mentioned Utah may have the appetite to try to build around Laurie Markkinen even at this stage.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that because if you're Utah, given what you have on your current roster and the state of this draft, with how loaded it seems to be at the top, wouldn't you be invested in getting as bad as possible? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to
No,
see what some of these teams decide to do.
I would, but I don't know how possible it is at this point. I think there's so the bottom is pretty hard, because you're adding both conferences at that point. And so when you're talking about Washington and Brooklyn and New Orleans and the Clippers, and you'd have to put in a
New
lot of
Orleans
work.
and the Clippers don't have first round draft picks. They have no reason to be this bad.
Yep, and yet they are.
I know. I feel like somebody's gonna find a way beneath those two because they actually don't have a reason to intentionally be bad.
I guess the team that should end up being 10 is probably Portland.
Or
In the sense,
Sacramento.
I think I just don't think Sacramento's good enough. I think Portland probably of the teams that could be good enough probably wants to be good enough the most. But I just don't think they have the on-ball talent. The Scoot Henderson thing hasn't
Oh,
worked
you're
out.
talking about 10. You're talking
Yeah,
about
I'm talking
10.
about 10.
Sorry, I'm talking about the other way. I'm talking about
Okay.
the last place team.
Oh yeah. No, I think I
Bottom.
think I think Sacramento could bottom out even more. But again, I think the 10. Hopefully, the 10 won't matter if you're the Grizzlies. You're gonna be that 7-8 game or better, and hopefully you win that game and avoid the Thunder in the first round. That's what they should be shooting for.
That was the other thing I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. What'd you make of the cup? I watched some of the cup. I think there's two things. One, I'm totally here for a Thunder and Spurs rivalry, and I sort of loved that Wemby. I think the comment ethical basketball is a little childish. Like, I don't know. I'm not really here for it. But I am generally in favor of Wemby taking shots at the Thunder because I can see that becoming a big rivalry and
Yeah,
being really fun for years to come. So to get that matchup was cool and have Wemby be awesome in the game was entertaining. And so I was definitely a big fan of that matchup and thought that game was great. Obviously, the Knicks go on to win. Atmosphere is just whatever. So if they move, I think there's been some reporting by the Athletic that they may just get rid of the neutral site thing. I'd be in favor of that. So
So that's it. So as far as the cup itself, I mean, I think it couldn't have gone much better in terms of how it played out. I think you had good games. You had matchups and teams and players that tied into the competitive arc of the season and the story arc of the season, right? Like it all felt highly relevant with the added juice of the tournament structure, and I think you got good games out of it. So I think that's exactly what they envisioned of that kind of thing. And honestly, last year it's pretty good because in the retrospect, because the Pacers jumped up and made a run in the cup, and then they ended up making a run to the NBA Finals. Um, the site thing is interesting. I'm a Vegas skeptic on a lot of things. Um, but I like the idea of the neutral site because I like the idea of stacking the semifinal games in one location on one night, NCAA tournament style, and then flowing that through to the next. So I like the idea of the common site for the final three games. I don't know. I mean, Madison Square. The issue there is that if you have a neutral site, are you getting people to come, right? If you're not coming to see quote unquote your team, and so like Madison Square Garden seems like an obvious place to do it. I think Chicago, middle of the country, big market, seems like a place to maybe try to do it. I am not a fan of this idea they floated out about like the storied college, blah blah blah, which to me like seemed to be an implication of like we're gonna take it to Cameron Indoor, which I think would be corny, frankly. So
yeah,
I'm sort of against that. Maybe
let's
that
take
means
it.
Indy.
Let's take it somewhere so small that we know we can fill the seats.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
all good on
And
that.
so the idea of putting it in New York or Chicago like would make some sense to me. The question is, no matter where you put it on a neutral site, the idea of having it stacked up tournament style to me is good. But the question is, and this question's true for NCAA tournament stuff too, right? Are you getting a crowd there, when the games are happening in a market where the teams are not from that market?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts here. One is that I'm on the record as a skeptic for whether or not this whole NBA in-season tournament thing was going to work out in general. I'm less of a skeptic now. I think ultimately it has to be decided by the players and the fans that it matters. And like if
Right.
you go look at European soccer, for example, like they play all kinds of tournaments within the structure of their season, and you know they're it's a big deal if you win them, right? There's different motivations, right? If you win Europa playing soccer, you get to play in Champions League the next year. Like there's, I guess, different benefits to winning, competitive benefits to winning beyond financial benefits in that setting. But ultimately, it's on the fans and the players to decide that they care about something like that. And I think we're starting to see that happen in the NBA where people actually care about this now. And so that for that reason, I feel a little bit better about it. On the location, I agree with you. I think to move it somewhere outside of Vegas to like a Madison Square Garden, in which, you go watch a game at MSG half the time anyway, if the opposing team's superstar is going off against the Knicks, half the arena starts cheering for whoever that might be because people are just there to see a show. So I think that could work, but I think it could also work if you left it in Vegas, but you changed the schedule. You can't you have a situation right now where teams are playing a game and then the very next week they're playing in Vegas in the middle of the week and like people can't get off of work and they especially don't want to be taking time off of work this time of year right before they're going to take time for the holidays or whatever. Like I think if the NBA really wants to get bodies and butts and seats, they need to allow time for fans to plan a trip to go do this, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, think about the Super Bowl, which is a neutral site venue, right? The season ends, there's 2 weeks. Both fan bases do all they can to figure out how they're going to get tickets to go to this thing, like whatever. The NCAA tournament obviously is usually a pretty quick turnaround, but it's you know what region, right? You know what region your team will go through, so you have plenty of time to plan if they were to make it. So I think that the NBA could benefit from like playing the quarterfinals and then having a pause, like wait 2 weeks, let fans make accommodations, and then hold The semifinals versus trying to do it all in one big setting. I think it's or one big, week and a half. I think that's asking a little bit too much of fans. So, but again, I'd be fine with moving it. I'd be fine with just playing them, home and away because I think you're going to get better atmospheres doing that anyway. So, but I thought it was good. I thought it was an entertaining product this year. You make anything of the Knicks winning? Of the Knicks, the best team in the East?
Well, I think, I think this is the first year since we've been doing this. You and I had the same finals pick, right? And it was Thunder Knicks. And
Yep.
so, I mean, I was pretty high on Detroit. I like what I've seen from Detroit, but I think the Knicks are probably the best team in the East. And so, yeah, I mean, I believed in it before the season, and nothing would dissuade me now.
You still think Orlando is better than Boston and Toronto? Orlando,
Uh,
Boston, Toronto are all right there. 15 and 11, 16 and 11 for Toronto, 15 and 11 for Boston, 15 and 11 for Orlando. A lot of
I
people
think,
liked Orlando, including
I think,
me.
I think Orlando should be the best of those three teams. Yes. To me, Cleveland's the team that's obviously missing there. Like on paper, Cleveland should be the third team. And that has not happened at this point. But yes, I think Orlando should be better than those teams. Boston's interesting though. I mean, they got that coach. They got Jalen Brown. They have infrastructure. Boston's sort of been what I thought Indiana was going to be, a team that like is missing multiple players, but like they keep winning anyway because of the infrastructure, and the coaching. That's been Boston, but Orlando I think should be the best of those teams.
What's going on with Desmond Bain throwing basketballs at dudes? I
He threw
mean,
the basketball at OG Anunoby. Did he throw somebody to the ground earlier this season or something like that? He had another incident earlier this
I
season,
think there's been two incidents in which he's thrown the ball at the Knicks. I
right?
don't remember, but
I
they
don't know.
obviously they made it to the cup and lost that game. Yeah, no, I'm starting to get excited about the upcoming trip. Although it'll be weird having the Desmond Bain versus Memphis Grizzlies game be international, but I'm sure he'll have a lot to say. Bain is usually a pretty straightforward person with the media stuff.
Right.
I love that he kind of played that off through it all. Just throws the ball at OG Anunoby and essentially makes nothing of it. It's just classic Desmond Bain.
It's looking like there won't be any Zach Edey playing on that trip. I assume he'll go on the trip, but I don't know. He won't be playing in it. You hope John Morant will. That's a day by day situation. Maybe Ty Jerome's back for that.
I'm at the stage on Ty Jerome. I don't know where you are, where it's like I haven't necessarily. Did they have a shoot around in Minnesota?
They did.
Did you go to it?
I did not. I had some conflicts.
Oh. I can't recall going to a shoot practice or shoot around and seeing Ty Jerome like out there doing a whole lot.
Right.
But I'm now on at the stage where it's like I'm waiting to see more, you know? I'm on official like I got to see him practicing or doing something after practice and then we're going to start asking about if the ramp up process has began. Because to this point, I kind of wasn't expecting him to be on the court, and now I think we're entering a potential return range. So we'll have to see.
Well, even the return range that they put out there, it was a wide range. There's like a 3 week range on the return range. And the far end of it would be more late January. So we're still a little ways away from that.
Yeah, so we will see. Um, Grizzlies have a few games coming up. We will have the holidays next week. Maybe we'll have a chance to squeeze in the podcast, but we will have to wait and see on that. In the meantime, the Grizzlies will take on the Thunder on Monday. They will take on the Utah Jazz on Tuesday. They are playing this weekend on Saturday against the Washington Wizards. So it'll be interesting to see if Ja plays in any of those games. I think I have a preferred pathway for Ja if you're looking at that schedule, but
Oh,
that's just me.
I do too. I mean, I had said earlier on the radio, I would hold him out of the next two
Right.
because yeah, I'm going to take my chances with Cam Spencer coming back that I'm going to win at home against Washington without him. And then you have a back to back, and I assume he's not playing both halves of that back to back probably. So
Yeah.
I just assume like take my L, or whatever, take my chances without him and Oklahoma City, and maybe bring him back the second half of that back-to-back against Utah. That's sort of what I would look at.
At Oklahoma City has proved to be a very difficult place for John Morant, whether
Yeah,
it be by
keep him away from Lou Dort.
yeah, keep him away from Lou Dort, keep him away from the negative vibes. He's the one that was saying we got to sage the whole arena. Like we don't need to take him into a house of horrors that is OKC.
Right.
I mean, he's had ejections there. We've had less than 10-point performances that I can recall. Like I just no. Let's put Jaw on ice until you come or until you travel to Utah on the 23rd, and then get the guy healthy for Christmas. So, all right, well that will probably do it for us this week, and we will likely be back next week, but we'll have to wait and see with the holiday schedule. Anything else you want to add, Chris? Anything people should go read before we get out of here?
I don't know, man. Just go to Daily Memphian and just click on all the stuff.
Yeah, click on all of it. Just click on all of it. There's a Vince Williams Jr. story over there. There's a couple of game recaps. Chris has movie stuff.
Yep.
Everybody's tired. It's that time of year. All right, for Drew and for Chris, we are out of here.